The Phantom's Lullaby. Chapter 1. Echoes of Lily. Elara jolts awake, her heart hammering against her ribs. The lullaby seeps through the frigid air of her cottage, its haunting melody achingly familiar. Lily's lullaby. The very one she sang to her daughter every night before. She can't finish the thought. Instead, Elara lies paralysed under the heavy quilt, her mind a battlefield. Part of her yearns to believe it's Lily reaching out from beyond, while another part, the rational side she's clung to since the tragedy, insists it's just a cruel trick of her grieving mind. The tune flits about the room, elusive and maddening. One moment it drifts from the hallway, the next it whispers from the corners of her bedroom. Elara squeezes her eyes shut, willing it to stop, but the melody persists, soft and relentless. This nightly torment has dragged on for weeks. Each time she's huddled beneath her covers, too afraid to confront whatever force lurks behind this ghostly serenade. But tonight feels different. A desperate need for answers claws at her chest, finally outweighing her fear. With trembling hands, Elara throws back the covers. The icy floorboards send a shiver through her as her bare feet make contact. Darkness presses in, transforming the once warm home into a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. She pauses at her bedroom door, hand hovering over the knob. The lullaby swells, as if beckoning her forward. Taking a deep breath, Elara steps into the hallway. Moonlight slices through the curtains, casting eerie patterns on the walls. Every creak of the old wooden floors echoes in the stillness. Elara moves cautiously, following the elusive melody. Her first stop is the nursery. She hesitates before pushing open the door, steeling herself for the sight of the room left untouched since that day. Dust motes dance in the pale light, settling on the crib, the rocking chair, the stuffed animals frozen in time. The lullaby whispers from the corners, but as Elara steps fully into the room, it fades, slipping away like sand through her fingers. Frustration bubbles up inside her. "Lily?" she whispers, her voice cracking. "Lily, are you here?" Silence is her only answer. Elara moves on to Lily's old bedroom. Here the melody grows slightly stronger, and for a moment hope flares in her chest. But as she crosses the threshold, the lullaby retreats once more, now seeming to emanate from the living room below. This maddening game of cat and mouse continues as she searches the cottage. Each time Elara thinks she's close to the source, it shifts, always just out of reach. The house itself seems to mock her efforts, its familiar creaks and groans taking on a sinister quality in the dead of night. As dawn's first light seeps through the windows, Elara slumps onto the couch, exhausted and no closer to answers. The lullaby has faded to nothing more than a whisper at the edges of her consciousness. She presses the heels of her hands against her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration and grief. What is she doing? Has she truly become so desperate that she's chasing ghosts through her own home? The rational part of her mind tries to reassert itself. There must be a logical explanation for all of this. Perhaps it's a neighbour's radio or some trick of the wind. But even as she thinks it, Elara knows it's not true. The lullaby is too precise, too familiar. It's Lily's song, sung in her voice, haunting her night after night. A knock at the door startles her from her reverie. For a moment, Elara considers ignoring it, but then she hears a familiar voice. "Elara, are you in there, dear?" Mrs. Thorne, the village's resident expert on all things supernatural, or so she claims. Elara hesitates, then forces herself to her feet. Maybe she'll have some insight into what's happening. She opens the door to find Mrs. Thorne peering up at her, sharp blue eyes studying her face intently. Her wispy white hair is tucked beneath a worn shawl, and she leans heavily on her wooden cane. "You look like you've seen a ghost, child," Mrs. Thorne says, her voice a mixture of concern and... Is that excitement? Elara steps back, allowing her to enter. "Not exactly," she replies, leading her to the living room. "But I've heard one. I think..." Mrs. Thorne settles into an armchair, her eyes never leaving Elara's face. "Tell me everything," she urges. So Elara does. She recounts the nightly visitations of the lullaby, her fruitless search through the house, the way it seems to move just as she gets close. As she speaks, Mrs. Thorne nods, her expression growing more animated with each detail. "It's her, isn't it?" Elara finally asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's Lily." Mrs. Thorne reaches out, patting her hand. "My dear, there's no doubt in my mind. Your Lily is reaching out to you from beyond the veil." A mix of emotions washes over Elara: relief, hope, fear. But why? What does she want? "That, I'm afraid, we'll have to discover," Mrs. Thorne replies. "The spirits have their reasons for making contact. Often it's unfinished business that keeps them tethered to our world. Your Lily may be trying to tell you something important." Elara nods, trying to process this information. Part of her wants to embrace Mrs. Thorne's explanation wholeheartedly, to believe that Lily is still here in some form. But doubt lingers. "What should I do?" she asks. Mrs. Thorne's eyes sparkle. "Embrace it, child. Don't fear these visitations. They're a gift, a chance to reconnect with your daughter. Listen closely to the lullaby. There may be messages hidden within the melody." As Mrs. Thorne continues to offer advice, another knock interrupts them. This time it's Father Bennett, his tall frame filling the doorway as Elara opens it. "Good morning, Elara," he says, his warm brown eyes radiating concern. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to check on you. Some of the villagers mentioned hearing strange noises from your cottage last night." Elara invites him in, noticing the slight frown that crosses his face when he spots Mrs. Thorne. The village priest and the local witch have never seen eye to eye. Father Bennett listens patiently as Elara recounts her experiences once more. Unlike Mrs. Thorne's excitement, his expression is one of gentle worry. "Elara," he says softly when she finishes, "I know how difficult these past months have been for you. Grief can manifest in many ways, including auditory hallucinations. What you're experiencing, it's likely your mind's way of processing this unbearable loss." Mrs. Thorne scoffs. "Hallucinations? Nonsense. The girl is clearly being contacted by her daughter's spirit. You'd do well not to dismiss the supernatural so easily, Father." Father Bennett's jaw tightens, but his voice remains calm. "I mean no disrespect, Mrs. Thorne, but I worry that encouraging these beliefs may be harmful to Elara's healing process." The two of them continue to debate, their arguments washing over Elara. She feels torn between their conflicting viewpoints. Mrs. Thorne's conviction that she's experiencing genuine supernatural events, and Father Bennett's insistence on finding rational explanations. As the day wears on, Elara receives one more visitor. Martha, her best friend since childhood, arrives in the afternoon. One look at Elara's face, and her expression fills with worry. "Oh, Elara," she says, pulling her into a tight hug. "What's going on? You look exhausted." They sit in the kitchen as Elara explains everything yet again. Martha listens, her brow furrowing deeper with each word. "Elara, honey," she says when Elara finishes, "I'm worried about you. All this talk of ghosts and spirits, it's not healthy. Have you considered that maybe it's time to leave Eldermoor for a while? A change of scenery might do you good." Elara bristles at her suggestion. "Leave? I can't leave, Martha. Not now. Something is happening here, something important. I need to understand it." Martha sighs, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I know you miss Lily. We all do. But chasing after these fantasies, it's not going to bring her back. You need to start living again, Elara." Elara pulls her hand away, suddenly feeling defensive. "You don't understand. None of you do. This is real, Martha. I'm not imagining things." The hurt in Martha's eyes makes Elara regret her harsh tone, but she can't bring herself to apologise. They sit in uncomfortable silence until Martha finally leaves, promising to check on her again soon. As night falls, Elara finds herself both dreading and anticipating the return of the lullaby. She paces the cottage, replaying the day's conversations in her mind. Mrs. Thorne's excitement, Father Bennett's concern, Martha's worry, each of them pulling her in different directions. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimes midnight, and as if on cue, the lullaby begins. But tonight, it's different, louder, more insistent, and it's coming from above. The attic. Elara's heart pounds as she realises where the sound is leading her. She's avoided the attic since Lily's death. It's where she stored away all her daughter's things, unable to bear the sight of them, but equally unable to part with them. With trembling hands, Elara grabs a candle and makes her way to the narrow staircase leading up to the attic. Each step creaks ominously beneath her feet, the lullaby growing more intense with every inch she ascends. She pushes open the attic door, and for a moment Elara's frozen on the threshold. The melody swirls around her, stronger than ever before. Dust motes dance in the candlelight as she takes a tentative step inside. Suddenly, a gust of wind from where, she has no idea, extinguishes her candle and slams the door shut behind her. Elara's plunged into darkness, the lullaby now seeming to come from everywhere at once. Panic grips her. She spins around, fumbling for the door handle. It won't budge. She's trapped. "Lily!" Elara calls out, her voice shaking. "Lily, if that's you, please help me." The lullaby continues, offering no response to her pleas. As her eyes adjust to the darkness, Elara notices something glinting in the far corner of the attic. It's small, barely visible beneath a thick layer of dust, but something about it tugs at her memory. Before she can investigate further, a loud creak echoes through the attic. Terror courses through her, and with a surge of desperate strength, Elara throws herself against the door. It gives way suddenly and she tumbles down the stairs, the lullaby fading behind her. Elara lies at the bottom of the staircase, heart racing, trying to make sense of what just happened. As the adrenaline fades, exhaustion takes over, and she drifts into an uneasy sleep right there on the floor. Morning light streaming through the windows wakes her. For a moment, Elara wonders if it was all a dream, but the ache in her body from her fall confirms the reality of last night's events. Steeling herself, she climbs the stairs once more to examine the attic door. To her shock, it's shut and locked, with no sign of the damage she knows she caused in her frantic escape. Elara rattles the handle, but it doesn't budge. The door appears completely untouched, as if last night never happened. She slumps against the wall, her mind reeling. Mrs. Thorne's words about spirits seem more plausible now, while Father Bennett's rational explanations feel woefully inadequate. And that mysterious object in the attic. What was it? Why did it seem so familiar? As Elara contemplates her next move, a chill runs down her spine. Whatever is happening in this cottage, whatever force is behind these events, she's now certain of one thing. Her journey for answers has only just begun, and it promises to be far more treacherous than she could have ever imagined. Chapter 2. A Mother's Resolve. Elara lies in bed, her eyes fixed on the shadowy ceiling above. The lullaby that once whispered through her cottage now reverberates through its walls, relentless and suffocating. Each note pounds against her skull, a constant reminder of what she's lost. Sleep eludes her, as it has for weeks now. She presses her palms against her ears, but it's futile. The melody seeps through her fingers, wrapping around her like a serpent. Is this madness, or something more sinister? In the village of Eldermoor, whispers grow louder. The Phantom's Lullaby, they call it. Elara catches snatch of conversation as she passes. Poor woman, driven mad by grief. It's that cottage, always been haunted, mark my words. Best to stay away. Who knows what spirits she stirred up? Their words burrow into her mind, feeding her growing paranoia. Someone or something is taunting her. Of that she's certain. Moonlight filters through thin curtains as Elara drags herself from bed. Her reflection in the mirror startles her. Sunken eyes, sallow skin, hair limp and unkempt. She barely recognizes herself. She stumbles to the kitchen, fumbling for the kettle. Tea will help, but as she reaches for a cup, the lullaby swells. The porcelain slips from her grasp, shattering on the floor. Elara doesn't bother to clean it up. What's the point? Days blur together. Elara moves through her cottage like a ghost, leaving half-finished tasks in her wake. Dishes pile in the sink. Laundry lies forgotten. The smell of burnt bread lingers from her latest failed attempt at normalcy. A knock at the door startles her from her stupor. Martha, of course. Elara considers ignoring it, but guilt gnaws at her. She opens the door. "Oh, Elara." Martha's eyes widen as she takes in her friend's dishevelled state. "I've been so worried. May I come in?" Elara nods, stepping aside. They settle in the living room, steam rising from hastily made tea. An uncomfortable silence stretches between them. "How are you holding up?" Martha finally asks. Elara's laugh is brittle. "How do you think? The lullaby. It's getting worse, Martha. Louder, more insistent. I can't escape it." Martha reaches for her hand, but Elara pulls away. "Have you considered what we talked about? Maybe it's time to leave Eldermoor. A change of scenery could do you good." Something snaps inside Elara. "Leave? You want me to abandon Lily?" "Elara, Lily's gone. I know it hurts, but no." Elara stands abruptly, tea sloshing onto the carpet. "You don't understand. She's trying to reach me. I can feel it." Martha's face crumples. "This isn't healthy. You're torturing yourself." "Get out." Elara's voice is ice. "If you can't support me, then just go. Elara, please. I said get out." The door slams behind Martha, leaving Elara alone with the lullaby once more. Tears burn in her eyes, but she refuses to let them fall. They don't understand. None of them do. Later, desperate for fresh air, Elara approaches the front door. Her hand barely touches the knob when it slams shut with a force that shakes the entire cottage. The bang echoes through empty rooms as Elara stumbles back, heart racing. She yanks the door open, searching for an explanation, but outside, all is still. No wind, no mischievous children playing pranks, nothing. Elara slams the door herself this time, leaning against it as her mind reels. Is the house itself conspiring against her now? In the hallway, a cherished photo of Lily catches her eye. Her daughter's frozen smile, captured in happier times. As Elara gazes at it, lost in memory, the frame suddenly crashes to the floor. Glass shatters around her feet. She kneels, hands shaking as she picks up the pieces. A glint of metal catches her eye. The hallway clock. It stopped. Elara's breath catches as she realizes the time displayed. 3:17 p.m. The exact moment Lily drew her last breath. Night falls, bringing with it the haunting lullaby, louder now, more insistent than ever. Elara grabs a candle, determination overriding her fear. She will find the source. She must. The flame casts eerie shadows as she creeps down the hallway. Each floorboard creaks beneath her feet, a counterpoint to the melody that fills the air. At the far end of the corridor, a dark figure appears. Elara's heart leaps into her throat. Without thinking, she grabs a heavy candlestick from a nearby table. The figure moves closer. Elara raises her makeshift weapon, hands trembling. "Elara! Good heavens, what are you doing?" The familiar voice cuts through her panic. Father Bennett steps into the light, his eyes wide with concern. "Father, what? How did you get in here?" Elara lowers the candlestick, embarrassment warring with anger at the intrusion. "The door was unlocked. I've been worried about you, Elara. The whole village has." He takes in her wild appearance, the weapon still clutched in her hand. "What's going on?" "Nothing. Everything's fine." The lie tastes bitter on her tongue. Father Bennett's brow furrows. "Elara, please, let me help you. This obsession with the lullaby, with Lily's ghost, it's destroying you." Something snaps inside her. "Obsession? Is that what you call a mother's love?" "Of course not, but you have no idea what I'm going through." Elara's voice rises, echoing through the empty house. "You want me to just forget her, to pretend she never existed?" Father Bennett's calm facade cracks. "That's not what I'm saying at all. Elara, you need to focus on healing, on moving forward. Lily wouldn't want—" "Don't you dare tell me what Lily would want." Elara advances on him, candlestick raised once more. "You're trying to silence me, to make me forget. Well, I won't. I won't abandon her." Father Bennett backs away, hands raised placatingly. "Elara, please. You're not thinking clearly. Let me help you find peace. Get out. Elara's voice is ice. Get out of my house, now. For a moment it seems Father Bennett might argue, but something in Elara's eyes stops him. He nods, defeated. I'm here if you need me, Elara. Please, don't let this consume you. The door closes behind him with a soft click. Elara sags against the wall, energy draining from her body. The lullaby, momentarily overshadowed by the confrontation, swells once more. She drags herself to her bedroom, collapsing onto the bed. Her mind whirs with the events of the day. Martha's pleas, the slamming door, Lily's fallen picture. Father Bennett's words echo in her head, battling against the ever-present melody. Something on the bed catches her eye. Elara blinks, certain she must be hallucinating. But no, there it sits, real and impossibly present. Lily's music box. Elara's breath catches in her throat. Her trembling fingers reach out, barely daring to touch the delicate, ornate object. It's exactly as she remembers, the pale pink enamel, the tiny ballerina poised to dance. But this is impossible. She had buried this music box with Lily, tucked it into her daughter's cold arms before they lowered the coffin. How could it be here, pristine and untouched by time or soil? Elara's mind reels, struggling to comprehend the reality before her. Is this proof at last, evidence that Lily is reaching out from beyond the grave? With shaking hands, she lifts the lid. The lullaby that has tormented her for weeks pours forth, but now it's different, softer, almost comforting. Elara closes her eyes, allowing the melody to wash over her. In this moment, the line between the living and the dead blurs. Elara feels Lily's presence more strongly than ever before. A sense of resolve settles over her. She will uncover the truth behind these strange occurrences, no matter the cost. As the music box plays its haunting tune, Elara makes a silent vow. She will not rest until she understands the message Lily is trying to send. The lullaby is no longer just a torment. It's a challenge, a mystery to be solved. The candle flickers, casting dancing shadows on the wall. Elara cradles the music box, her determination growing with each note. Whatever forces are at work in this cottage, whatever secrets lie hidden in Eldermoor's history, she will face them. For Lily, for herself, for the chance to bridge the gap between this world and the next. The lullaby plays on, a siren song leading Elara deeper into the unknown. And as the night deepens around her, Elara Whitcombe takes her first steps on a journey that will test the very limits of love, grief, and the supernatural. Chapter 3. The Forgotten Journal. Elara's fingers tremble as she traces the delicate engravings on the music box. Moonlight filters through the attic's dusty window, casting eerie shadows across forgotten relics. The lullaby's haunting melody wraps around her, a siren's call she can no longer resist. "Lily," she whispers, her voice cracking, "what are you trying to tell me?" Silence holds the answer back, broken only by the relentless ticking of the music box. Elara's eyes burn from lack of sleep, her mind a fog of grief and desperation. She's spent countless hours up here, combing through every scrap of paper, every weathered trinket. Somewhere in this labyrinth of memories lies the key to understanding her daughter's message. It has to. A floorboard creaks beneath her weight as she shifts, sending a puff of dust into the air. Elara coughs, waving it away with an impatient hand. Her gaze falls on a stack of yellowed newspapers, their headlines screaming of long-forgotten tragedies. Local child vanishes without a trace. Mysterious deaths plague Eldermoor. Village elders speak of restless spirits. Elara's heart pounds as she scans the articles, piecing together fragments of Eldermoor's dark history. The lullaby swells, as if urging her to dig deeper. She can feel the threads of some greater mystery tangling around her, suffocating in their intensity. "What does it all mean?" she mutters, rubbing her temples. The lines between past and present blur, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. Is Lily's lullaby just one thread in a much larger, more sinister tapestry? The melody grows louder, more insistent. It echoes through the walls of the cottage, a constant, maddening presence. Elara clamps her hands over her ears, but it's futile. The lullaby has seeped into her very bones. "Stop it!" she cries, her composure finally shattering. "Please, just stop!" But the music plays on, relentless and unyielding. Elara staggers to her feet, nearly tripping over a box of old photographs. She needs air, needs to escape the suffocating weight of memories and unanswered questions. As she reaches for the attic door, a glint of metal catches her eye. Tucked away in a shadowy corner sits a small, leather-bound book. Elara's breath catches in her throat as she recognizes her grandmother's elegant script on the cover. With trembling hands, she lifts the journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. The candlelight flickers as she opens it, casting dancing shadows across the faded ink. August 15th, 1952. She reads aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "The lullaby came again last night. I fear I'm losing my mind, but I know what I heard. The same melody that tormented my mother now haunts me. There must be a connection to the music box, to our family's history in Eldermoor. I pray I find answers before it's too late." Elara's hands shake as she flips through the pages, devouring her grandmother's words. Each entry speaks of a hauntingly familiar experience, the spectral lullaby, the feeling of a presence just out of sight. But it's the final pages that make her breath catch in her throat. "The ritual," she murmurs, eyes wide. "Of course." Her grandmother's neat script details an ancient ceremony, passed down through generations, a way to bring peace to a tormented soul, to silence the ghostly melodies once and for all. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, hope flutters in Elara's chest. She clutches the journal close, a lifeline in the storm of grief and confusion that has consumed her. "I can end this," she whispers, a fierce determination taking hold. "I can help Lily rest." The attic suddenly feels oppressive, the air thick with unseen tension. Elara turns, ready to leave, when a deafening bang echoes through the small space. The door slams shut, the lock clicking into place with a chilling finality. "No!" Elara breathes, panic rising in her throat. She lunges for the door, tugging frantically at the handle. It doesn't budge. A gust of icy wind extinguishes her candle, plunging the attic into darkness. The temperature plummets, raising goosebumps on Elara's skin. She spins, heart racing, as shadows seem to lengthen and writhe in the corners of her vision. "Who's there?" she demands, her voice trembling despite her efforts to stay calm. "Show yourself." The wind howls in response, a keening wail that sets her teeth on edge. Objects begin to rattle and shake, old picture frames, dusty vases, forgotten toys. They rise into the air, swirling in a vortex of memories and pain. Elara ducks as a heavy book flies past her head, crashing against the wall behind her. She clutches the music box to her chest, instinctively knowing it's at the heart of this supernatural maelstrom. "I won't let you have it," she shouts, though she's not sure who or what she's defying. The music box vibrates in her grasp, its melody distorted and warped. It pulses with an otherworldly energy, and Elara realizes with startling clarity that it truly is the key to everything. An antique mirror shatters, sending shards of glass skittering across the floor. Elara stumbles back, her foot catching on an overturned chair. She falls hard, the impact knocking the wind from her lungs. The music box tumbles from her grasp, sliding across the floor and coming to rest beneath an old dresser. "No!" Elara cries, scrambling to her hands and knees. She reaches for the box, fingertips just brushing its smooth surface. An invisible force yanks her back, slamming her against the far wall. Pain explodes across her back, but Elara grits her teeth, forcing herself to focus. She scans the room, desperate for any means of escape. The windows are sealed tight, the door still firmly locked. Panic claws at her throat as the maelstrom intensifies, the very air seeming to pulse with malevolent energy. Just as despair threatens to overwhelm her, Elara spots it, a small, unassuming latch on the far wall, barely visible in the chaos. Hope surges through her veins, giving her a burst of desperate strength. She launches herself across the room, dodging flying debris and fighting against the howling wind. Her fingers close around the latch, and with a grunt of effort, she wrenches it open. A narrow crawl space is revealed, leading to what she prays is safety. Elara doesn't hesitate. She dives for the music box, snatching it from beneath the dresser. Then, clutching her precious cargo to her chest, she squeezes into the cramped opening. Splinters dig into her palms as she crawls, the oppressive darkness pressing in on all sides. After what feels like an eternity, Elara tumbles out of the crawl space and down a short flight of stairs. She lands in an undignified heap on the second-floor landing, gasping for breath. Above her, the attic door slams shut with a thunderous finality. For long moments, Elara simply lies there, her chest heaving. The music box is a comforting weight in her arms, its melody now soft and almost soothing. As her racing heart begins to slow, she pushes herself into a sitting position, wincing at the various aches and bruises making themselves known. "What in God's name was that?" she mutters, running a shaky hand through her tangled hair. As if in answer, she feels something shift within the music box. Frowning, Elara turns it over in her hands, examining it closely. There, cleverly hidden in the intricate carvings, is a small compartment she'd never noticed before. With trembling fingers, she pries it open. Inside lies a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, but still intact. Elara's breath catches in her throat as she carefully unfolds it, revealing a message written in a painfully familiar childish scrawl. "I'm always with you, Mummy. Love, Lily." Tears blur Elara's vision as the truth crashes over her like a tidal wave. The lullabies, the strange occurrences, the sense of a presence just out of sight. It was never about haunting her. It was Lily, trying to reach out to offer comfort in the only way she could. "Oh, sweetheart," Elara chokes out, clutching the note to her heart. "I'm so sorry. I didn't understand." As the realization sinks in, the oppressive atmosphere that has hung over the cottage for so long begins to dissipate. The air feels lighter, cleaner somehow. Elara takes a deep, shuddering breath, feeling as though she's waking from a long and terrible nightmare. She knows now that the spirits she thought were tormenting her were manifestations of her own grief and guilt. The lullabies weren't meant to drive her mad, but to guide her towards acceptance and healing. Lily's spirit wasn't trapped or restless. She had been watching over Elara all along, trying to help her move forward. "Thank you, baby," Elara whispers, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. "I hear you now. I understand." But even as a sense of peace washes over her, Elara knows her journey isn't quite finished. Her grandmother's journal weighs heavily in her pocket, a reminder of the ritual that still needs to be performed. Not to banish a restless spirit as she'd originally thought, but to honour Lily's memory and truly lay her own grief to rest. With newfound determination, Elara pushes herself to her feet. She makes her way downstairs, pausing only to light candles throughout the cottage. Their warm glow chases away the last lingering shadows, filling the rooms with a soft, comforting light. In the centre of the living room, Elara places the music box. Its melody, once so haunting, now feels like a gentle caress. She arranges the necessary items for the ritual around it. Her grandmother's journal, Lily's favourite stuffed animal, a lock of her daughter's hair kept safe all these years. As night deepens outside, Elara takes a deep breath, steeling herself for what's to come. She's scared, yes, but also ready. Ready to face her grief head-on, to honour Lily's memory, and to finally find the peace that has eluded her for so long. "I love you, Lily," she murmurs, her fingers ghosting over the music box. "Always and forever." With that, Elara begins the ritual, her voice steady as she recites the words passed down through generations. The candles flicker, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air grows thick with anticipation, charged with an energy that's no longer frightening but filled with possibility. As the final words leave her lips, a profound sense of calm settles over Elara. The music box's melody swells one last time, achingly beautiful in its farewell. Then slowly it fades away, leaving behind a silence that feels more like a beginning than an end. Elara opens her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. But for the first time in longer than she can remember, they're tears of release, of acceptance. The weight that has pressed down on her for so long begins to lift, allowing her to breathe freely at last. "Goodbye, my love," she whispers, a bittersweet smile on her face. "Rest easy now, and thank you for everything." As dawn's first light begins to creep through the windows, Elara feels something fundamental shift within her. The journey isn't over, grief never truly ends, but she's taken the first crucial steps towards healing. With Lily's memory held close in her heart, Elara faces the new day, ready to embrace whatever comes next. Chapter 4. The Last Lullaby. Elara wakes with a start, her heart pounding in the eerie silence of the cottage. The absence of the lullaby that has haunted her for weeks leaves a void more oppressive than its haunting melody ever was. She sits up, pushing tangled hair from her face, and surveys the dim room. Shadows cling to every corner, transforming once familiar objects into looming spectres. The air feels thick, stagnant, as if the very walls of the cottage are holding their breath. Elara's body aches, a testament to countless sleepless nights and the toll of unrelenting grief. She stumbles to the window, yanking open the heavy curtains. The village of Eldermoor sprawls before her, a patchwork of grey stone and muted colours. But something's different today. The streets seem emptier, the buildings more distant. It's as if the entire village has retreated, leaving Elara isolated in her cocoon of sorrow. "Is this what madness feels like?" she whispers, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The silence stretches on, broken only by the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Each second feels like an eternity, a reminder of how time has lost all meaning since Lily's death. Elara's gaze falls on the music box, perched innocently on the bedside table. Its ornate surface gleams in the weak sunlight, a stark contrast to the dull ache in her chest. She reaches for it, her fingers trembling as they trace the delicate engravings. For weeks, this small object has been the centre of her world, the source of both torment and desperate hope. Now, in the oppressive quiet, Elara feels something shift inside her. A moment of clarity pierces through the fog of grief and exhaustion. "I can't keep doing this," she murmurs, her voice cracking from disuse. The realization hits her with the force of a physical blow. If she doesn't act soon, the darkness that's been growing inside her will consume her entirely. The thought sends a chill down her spine. Elara clutches the music box to her chest and moves to the window once more. Her gaze is drawn to the distant cliffs where she used to walk with Lily. The memory of those happier times twists like a knife in her gut, but it also sparks an idea. "I have to let go," she whispers, the words barely audible even to herself. The decision, once made, feels both terrifying and inevitable. Elara knows what she must do, but the thought fills her with equal parts relief and heartache. She glances around the room, at the remnants of her life with Lily scattered about. Each object seems to whisper, urging her forward. With shaking hands, Elara dresses and grabs her coat. The music box feels impossibly heavy as she tucks it into her pocket. She pauses at the front door, her hand hovering over the knob. For a moment, the urge to retreat back into the safety of her grief is overwhelming. "No," she says firmly, squaring her shoulders. "It's time." The village is unnaturally quiet as Elara makes her way through the winding streets. The few villagers she passes either avoid her gaze entirely or watch her with a mixture of pity and curiosity. She can almost hear their whispers, the rumours that have no doubt been circulating about her descent into madness. Mrs. Thorne stands in her doorway as Elara passes, her rheumy eyes sharp with concern. "Be careful, child," she calls out, her voice quavering. "The spirits are restless today." Elara manages a tight nod but doesn't slow her pace. She can't risk losing her resolve now. The path to the cliffs is achingly familiar, every step heavy with memories. Elara remembers countless walks with Lily, her daughter's laughter carried on the sea breeze. Today, the wind holds only the promise of rain, dark clouds gathering on the horizon. As Elara nears the cliff's edge, the wind picks up, whipping her hair around her face. She takes a deep breath, tasting salt on her tongue. The scent that once brought her peace now only intensifies her sense of loss. The music box is a lead weight in her pocket as Elara stares out at the churning sea below. Waves crash violently against the rocks, their roar drowning out the storm of emotions raging inside her. With trembling fingers, Elara retrieves the music box. She cradles it in her palms, tears blurring her vision as she takes in every detail one last time. "Lily," she chokes out, her voice barely audible over the wind. "I'm so sorry, baby. I've been holding on too tight. I thought if I just believed hard enough, I could bring you back somehow." Elara's tears fall freely now, mingling with the first drops of rain. "But you're gone," she continues, her words raw with pain and realization. "And I can't keep living in the past. I can't keep letting this grief consume me. You wouldn't want that for me." She takes a deep, shuddering breath. "I love you, Lily. I will always love you. But it's time for me to let go." With a strangled cry, Elara hurls the music box into the sea. Time seems to slow as she watches it tumble through the air, glinting in a brief ray of sunlight before disappearing beneath the waves. The moment it vanishes from sight, Elara feels something shift inside her. The oppressive weight that has clung to her for so long begins to dissipate, replaced by a deep, aching emptiness. It's not relief, not exactly, but it's something close to it. She stands at the edge of the cliff for a long time, letting the wind and rain soak through her clothes. The sea below is wild and untamed, but in its chaos, Elara finds an odd sort of calm. The lullabies are gone, replaced by the rhythmic pounding of the waves, a new kind of lullaby, one that speaks of release rather than loss. As the storm intensifies, Elara finally turns away from the cliff's edge. She feels wrung out, emotionally and physically exhausted. But for the first time in months, she can breathe freely. The walk back to the village passes in a blur. Elara barely registers the concerned looks from the few villagers braving the weather. She stumbles through her front door, dripping water onto the worn floorboards. That night, Elara sleeps deeply for the first time since Lily's death. Her dreams are a jumble of memories. Lily's laughter, the music box's melody, the roar of the sea. But when she wakes, the crushing weight of grief doesn't immediately descend. The following morning dawns clear and bright. Elara dresses with care, combing out her tangled hair and choosing clothes that aren't stained with tears and neglect. She catches a glimpse of herself in the mirror and pauses, startled by the change she sees. The haunted look that has clouded her eyes for months has softened. She's not healed, far from it, but there's a quiet peace in her expression that wasn't there before. Elara takes a deep breath, steeling herself for what comes next. "It's time," she murmurs, grabbing her coat. The walk to the cemetery feels both endless and far too short. Elara's steps slow as she approaches Lily's grave, her heart pounding in her chest. She hasn't been here since the funeral, too afraid to face the stark reality of her loss. The headstone is simple, Lily's name carved in elegant script. Someone, Martha probably, has left fresh flowers. Their sweet scent mingles with the earthy smell of recent rain. Elara kneels beside the grave, her fingers tracing the letters of Lily's name. The pain of loss is still there, a dull ache in her chest, but it's softer now, less suffocating. "Hi, sweetheart," she says softly, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I'm sorry it's been so long. I'm sorry for a lot of things." She takes a shaky breath, gathering her thoughts. "I've been lost, Lily. So lost without you. I thought if I held on tight enough, if I listened hard enough, I could somehow bring you back. But that's not how it works, is it?" Elara wipes at her eyes, a sad smile tugging at her lips. "I threw away the music box yesterday. I hope you understand. It was beautiful, and I'll treasure the memories of you playing it. But I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep letting my grief consume me." She pauses, gathering her courage. "I'm not saying goodbye, not really. You'll always be a part of me, Lily, but I need to learn how to live again, how to be more than just a grieving mother. I think that's what you'd want for me." Elara falls silent, letting the quiet of the cemetery wash over her. Birds chirp in nearby trees, and a gentle breeze rustles the flowers on Lily's grave. It's peaceful here, she realises, not the oppressive quiet of her cottage, but a calm that speaks of acceptance and healing. As she stands to leave, Elara notices movement from the corner of her eye. She turns to see Father Bennett approaching, his kind eyes filled with concern. "Elara," he says gently, "it's good to see you here." She manages a small smile. "It was time," she replies simply. Father Bennett nods, understanding in his gaze. "How are you feeling?" Elara considers the question, surprised to find she has an answer. "Like I can breathe again," she says softly. "It still hurts. I don't think it will ever stop hurting completely, but I'm ready to try living again." The priest's smile is warm and genuine. "That's all anyone can ask, Elara. Grief is a journey, not a destination. You've taken an important step today." They talk for a few minutes more, Elara finding comfort in Father Bennett's steady presence. As she turns to leave, he places a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Remember," he says, "you're not alone in this. The village is here for you, whenever you're ready." Elara nods, touched by his words. As she walks back through the village, she notices the change in how people react to her. The whispers have stopped, replaced by small nods of acknowledgement and hesitant smiles. Mrs. Thorne waves from her porch, a knowing look in her faded blue eyes. "The spirits are calmer today," she calls out. "You've done well, child." Even Martha, who Elara has been avoiding for weeks, offers a tentative smile as they pass on the street. "Tea soon?" she asks, hope clear in her voice. "I'd like that," Elara responds, surprised to find she means it. Back at her cottage, Elara moves through the rooms with a new sense of purpose. The silence that once felt oppressive now feels almost comforting. She runs her fingers along the walls, the furniture, feeling the memories embedded in every corner. This place, which has felt like a prison for so long, is still filled with love, with the echoes of the life she shared with Lily. The grief is still there, a constant companion, but it no longer holds her captive. As evening falls, Elara sits by the window, looking out at the village and the distant cliffs. A gentle breeze sweeps through the room, carrying with it the faintest echo of a familiar melody. Just a few notes, barely audible but unmistakable. For a moment, Elara tenses, afraid the torment is beginning again, but this time the sound brings a deep sense of comfort, a reminder that Lily's spirit will always be with her, not as a ghost, but as a cherished memory. Elara smiles softly, turning her gaze toward the sea. She understands now that the lullaby was never a curse. It was a gift, a way for Lily to stay close, even in death. The realization fills her with a warmth that spreads through her entire being. "Thank you," she whispers to the wind, to Lily, to the memory that will forever be a part of her. As night settles over Eldermoor, Elara feels something she hasn't experienced in a long time. Hope. The days ahead are uncertain, but she's ready to face them. To live again, not in the shadow of grief, but in the light of the love she still holds for Lily. She makes plans to have tea with Martha, to thank Father Bennett properly, to rejoin the village she's kept at a distance for so long. The journey to healing is far from over, but Elara knows she's no longer alone. Before bed, Elara pauses by the window one last time. She looks out at the moonlit cliffs, remembering the music box now resting at the bottom of the sea. "Good night, my love," she whispers, her voice full of love rather than sorrow. The wind picks up, rustling the curtains. For a moment, Elara could swear she hears a child's laughter carried on the breeze. She smiles, a real smile that reaches her eyes. Lily's memory will always be with her, guiding her, but now it's a source of strength rather than sorrow. Elara climbs into bed, feeling truly at peace for the first time in months. As she drifts off to sleep, the faint notes of a lullaby whisper through her dreams, But this time, there's no fear. Only love and the promise of a new beginning.